I'm wondering, within that context, if you would talk about the LEAP Manifesto in Canada as a sort of concrete example of what organizing can look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we tried to do something similar a couple of years ago, coming on a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, in Canada, and this idea has been spreading, and there's actually been quite a bit of interest in this country and in different countries in this model. In Canada, we did do it. We did start at the national level. It's a little easier to do that in a country with a much smaller population. But one of the things that's been interesting is that it's now gone local. People are taking it and working with it at the city level, at the union level. So what it was is precisely what Michelle was talking about, a people's platform, right? And we actually did it during an election campaign where we looked around and we saw that none of the parties that had a chance, there were 3 parties that had a chance of winning the election, and not one of those parties had a platform that we felt met the historic moment on any of whether inequality, indigenous rights, racial justice, or climate change. So we, a group of us, convened a meeting of 60 movement leaders, theorists, very cross-movement, and we had some high-level leadership from the trade union movement, from the climate movement, migrant rights. It wasn't perfect. We didn't have everybody who we should have had. We had some incredible indigenous leadership in the room, and we had 2 days of very, 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 very hard discussions. Trying to understand why we hadn't worked together in the past. We had coalitions of no's before, where we had come together to say, we don't want this trade deal, or we don't want this politician, we don't want this, terrible austerity package that's coming down. But we had not, in recent memory, come together to say, this is what we do want. This is what the world we want actually looks like. What does it feel like? How can we imagine it? And getting to that space to dream was really hard, because there's baggage in all of these movements, and there's terrible history that we're trying to navigate. So we were blessed to have some incredible facilitators to help us work through that, and that's really important when you're building these spaces and people are coming together to understand that arguments mean it's working. If you're not arguing, your coalition isn't wide enough. And this is part of healing, right? But it's a skill. It's a real skill to know how to facilitate those moments so that you can move past them and through them, right? And so some themes emerged, and one of them was this: that we live in this culture of endless extraction. And disposal. Extraction from the earth, extraction from people's bodies, from communities, as if there's no limit, as if there's no consequence to our taking, and disposing, and as if it can go on endlessly. And we are reaching the breaking point on multiple levels, that the communities are breaking, the planet is breaking, people's bodies are breaking, we are taking too much. And so the frame that emerged out of it was moving to a culture of care, of radical care and consent. That begins with the original caretakers of the land, water, and air, which begins with fully implementing the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It means taking the science of climate change seriously, that says that we need to get to 100% renewable energy very quickly, in 2 decades for electricity, for the rest of the economy a little bit after that. But that as we make this transition, we have this incredible opportunity to build a fairer economy. So why would we build as unequal a renewable energy sector as we have built a fossil fuel sector, right? The nice thing about renewables is they're everywhere, so you don't have to have monopoly control in the same way. So we were inspired by the German model, where in transitioning to renewables, and they're not all the way there, but they're a hell of a lot further along than we are, there's been an explosion of cooperative ownership, 900 new energy cooperatives. Hundreds of cities and towns have taken back control of their energy grids so that they run them democratically and keep the profits. in their communities to pay for daycares and community centers and lots of good things. But we also said, no, we want to go further than that. We want energy reparation. We want energy justice, which means that the people who have been on the front line of our extraction and of our toxic addictions and have borne the burden in their bodies with their soaring asthma rates for their children in cancer clusters, and you certainly know all about this in Chicago, must be first in line to own and control their own renewable energy projects, right? So the other thing that we wanted to do was redefine what a green job was, what a climate job was. We said, wait a minute, there's all these people out there who are doing low carbon work. It's not just guys in hard hats putting up solar panels. Teaching is low carbon. Caring for the sick is low carbon. And daycare is a green workplace, you know? And overwhelmingly, this is work that's done by women, overwhelmingly women of color, on the front lines of austerity clawbacks. We worked with, and so we said austerity is a logic that's at war with life on Earth, and it has to end. And the money is out there. We live in a time of unprecedented private wealth. So we worked with progressive economists to cost it out and say where the money's going to come from. It's going to come from polluter pays. It's going to come from redistribution. So those are the principles: frontline first, polluter pays. And you know, I think in this country right now, it's so crucial because there are these amazing, inspiring social movements that predate the Trump era, and they've been surging since Trump. And it's really urgent, I think, that all these movements find space to come together and hash out some kind of people's platform. And I agree with Michelle entirely that it's not going to work at the national level first, but it could work in a city like Chicago. It could start to work at a state level, and we are seeing some examples of this in the New York State. There's a great coalition called New York Renews that is bringing together labor, racial justice, climate justice to fight for really progressive legislation. But, you know, rather than waiting for some perfect candidate, you know, to come along and do it all for us, what if the people's platforms led, right? And what if people figured this out, including what their red lines are, right? This is what any candidate that wants our vote has to endorse this platform, has to endorse these demands, right? That would put, I think that would put us miles ahead of where we were in 2016. And I think just waiting and seeing who's going to run, what's it going to look like. Well, let's wait and see. That's backwards, right? Get organizing. Write your platforms. And then say to the candidates, if you want our votes, endorse our platforms.
Very good.